All right. All right. Thank you so much, Tara. And again, I really appreciate you helping host this for us. Um, I'm Dr. Sarah Schlegel. I am a developmental behavioral pediatrician at Connecticut Children's. I am the director of the Transition to Adulthood with Developmental Services clinic there. And at our annual meeting for the Society for Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics last fall, we have a special interest group call for the transition that we were down in the DC area. And so we were excited to invite Paula Mannion, who is the founding chair of our stomping ground, to talk to us there. And her work is so inspiring that I said, we need to bring this to Connecticut. And so we talked and arranged this, and through the Autism Spectrum Disorder Advisory Council, we are bringing this wonderful presentation, hopefully to inspire, something like this to happen in Connecticut. I did want to say we will want to have questions at the end. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. So Tara will help moderate that at the end of the presentation. And also Tara will put her email address into the chat. And if you are interested, if anybody's interested, and we'll remind you again at the end, if you're interested, please send her an email if you're interested in, joining this movement and doing some of this work, if we want to do something like this in Connecticut. So with that, I will turn over to Paula Mannion, as well as Josue Amaya, who is the lead community builder for our stomping ground. Thank you both for presenting to us tonight.
Welcome. It's great to see you again, Sarah. Thank you for inviting us to this. We're happy to share our mission. Josue, can you share slides? Great.
Do you see them?
Yes. Thank you so much. So again, I'm Paula Mannion. I actually grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut, and left home many years ago and met my husband out west, and we started our family. He was Air Force. We actually both were, and moved to the Virginia area where we've been for the last 27, 28 years. We have 3 children. Our oldest has autism. He'll be 36 years old this summer. And about 2018, the story is, and we hope someone out there is just like my husband and I were 6 years ago, our son was getting ready to celebrate his 29th or actually 30th birthday. And I was concerned. My husband and I were concerned. He was still living in our basement. Nothing had changed post high school. Transition out of high school is difficult. He did attend college. He was working, but in spite of working, he couldn't afford housing. He didn't drive. So all his social experiences really relied upon us as family and his friends to provide those experiences. So I saw an ad for a discussion on housing options for adults with disabilities. And it happened to be the one snowy night in November. And I thought, no one is going to go to this and they're going to cancel it. But they didn't. And just a few of us were in that room, which is why I say, doesn't matter if there are 5 people out there tonight or 25. It only takes one person to be inspired for this movement. So we learned about 2 things that night as we sat there with our son. One was that the state of Virginia was under a settlement with the Department of Justice. And that settlement had to do with 2 individuals who died in the Central Virginia training facility. There were 5 institutions at the time, and 2 adults had died. That opened up a big case. The Department of Justice went in and saw that Olmstead was being violated. And Olmstead is where people have the right to live in the most integrated settings. And so they saw a lot of individuals living in these training facilities who needed to be outside of those training facilities. So they entered into a 10-year settlement. And during that 10 years, part of it had a lot to do with housing, that the priority would be to move people out of institutions and out of group homes, but also to look at the population of adults that were coming of age and living at home and really would be homeless if it weren't for their parents. So they provided a lot of housing subsidies within that settlement, and really a lot more agency and individuals to help with how to navigate that process. So that was one thing. But the second thing we learned about that night was an organization in Maryland. Another couple with a child with a disability who were building an affordable housing community. Now, her husband was a developer. She had started a school for children with special needs. They're really a power couple, the Copelands, Jillian and Scott Copeland. But I was so inspired sitting there. Why was I inspired? Well, first of all, it was an affordable housing community in the center of Rockville, Maryland. Walk out your back door and you have the metro. Walk out your front door and you have everything that you could want. Grocery stores, shops, parks, recreation, opportunities for spontaneous interaction and inclusion. They would have a community center, 10,000 square feet within the building where they'd provide programming. They'd have staff to help with inclusion, and 25% of the population in that building would be persons with disabilities. So you'd have an inclusive community. I was so inspired by that. In January of 2019, I turned to my husband. I waited till the holidays were over before I hit him with this and said, what do you think? Let's contact the Copelands and see if we could do something similar. Now, between the time of January 2019 and March, when we incorporated, we did a lot. I reached out to almost everybody I knew as a pediatric nurse practitioner, taking care of families for many years. I reached out to some of my parents, reached out to other people who I'd kind of lost contact with, who I thought I'd seen here and there. Their children were also getting older. Could we do this? We formed a board, we incorporated, and we wrote our mission statement. Now, I want to pause here for a second. We thought we'd be one community, just like Main Street. Just build one community. And we held an event at the JCC. And we thought just a few people would attend, but many people attended. And we realized that this was going to be a challenge. And even Main Street, when they opened their doors, realized what a challenge it was. When 1,000 people applied for 25 slots to live in that building. So we were approached that night by an affordable housing developer who said we should talk. And we pivoted. We pivoted in that moment. We got together and we said, instead of one community, maybe we could partner with our affordable housing developers for these set-aside units under the Department of Justice settlement and build many communities and help those families navigate that complex system. Now, what we've managed to do is house 60 people. You can, in 7 affordable housing partner sites. We've provided over 100 hours of free community events every month. And in the end, we have had a total last year of 950 unique participants participating in our events. Now, that's a lot better than we would have been able to do with one building. In each of our buildings, we have about 10 to 15%. It may be a little higher because people like to live in one of these communities, so they may come through a different doorway, which Josue will talk about in a few minutes. But this is something we're so proud of. And we really have, you can flip to the next slide, Josue. We really have thought a lot about how this model can go through Virginia, but can go around the country. This is a very replicable model, okay? It's the housing first approach. Put a roof over someone's heads, give them the supports they need, and then they will be able to climb up the ladder and experience love and belonging and self-actualization and all those experiences that we take for granted. They're not going to get it living with us. And if you wait for your adult to have all the skills in place that they need, it's not going to happen. 10 years after high school, our son had no further skills to live on his own than he did 10 years prior. So we really believe moving our adults into our communities and then giving them the supports they need has a much better outcome. There's decades of research that support this. And why is it so important? Next slide, Josue. It's important because it is very difficult to find affordable housing for the typical population. but it is extremely difficult. We're talking about incomes that are 6% or less of the area median income, right? So very, very low income if you live off Social Security. So having these housing subsidies is extremely important. And it is far cheaper to house someone in one of our communities than it is in a hospital or a nursing home. It is safer. And the community inclusion is just readily available. Now, when we talk about safe, we talk about during COVID, if we just looked at this one period of the 1 million deaths, 20% of them were people with disabilities living in congregate settings. They bore the brunt of the mortality during COVID. And the fastest growing population of people in nursing homes is adults with disabilities under the age of 30. And as we speak tonight, over 820,000 adults are living in nursing homes, waiting to get out, waiting for an opportunity like this. 75% are living with their parents, and their parents are getting older, and they fall into the first available bed. So when people say, I'm going to wait, they need to be older, I think the time is now. I think the cliff is steep. You need to find a way to gently move their adults into a situation where they can have the supports and live a meaningful life. So these central locations of our 7 communities are critical. Metro stations, bus stops, grocery stores, doctor's offices, dentists, pharmacies, parks, everything that we need. And our adults are learning how to, and Josue will talk about how they communicate and get together, but they can move from one community to the next when they get to know each other at OSG events. So I think this is where I'm going to turn it over to Josue so he can really tell you about what we're doing to bring that community inclusion alive.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name's Josue, and I am a community builder for our stomping ground. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But the first slide I have is our philosophy and how for our stomping ground, our focus is interdependence. You know, independence is a great thing, but in order to build communities, you need that interdependence, that, you know, relying on each other, that, you know, that belief in each other, you know, just being able to say hello to people as you take the elevator to your apartment, you know, creating that and cultivating that. And it's just a beautiful thing to really see in action. You know, an example of this I have is one of our adults who lives at our property at Gilliam Place. You know, he's very loud. He has Tourette's. So, you know, he sometimes will just make noises. But, you know, one of the kids in the buildings really gravitates, you know, towards talking to him because he's a listener. You know, he'll listen and chat with her and ask her about her day. And that really, you know, helps her with her own struggles at school, and, you know, just being able to do that. And, you know, showing our communities this is what, you know, a disability may look like. So then kids are learning about this when they're my age. You know, it's not something that's unique. It's something they've learned about. So that's why we really, you know, we're really focused on interdependence. So we all rely on each other and learn from each other. You know I learn from our adults. They, you know, a lot of them have their hyper asphyxiation. So I be learning a lot from them, but it's always a good time and I enjoy it. Next slide. So pathways to an OSG community. How does this work? And so the way we say how this works is there's 3 ways. The first way is through the settlement population, which is basically your waiver. If your waiver has that option of housing, you can come in via that way. Paula mentioned that 10 to 15%. So our affordable housing developers set aside units. And if you have a certain waiver, boom, you can get in that way, or just the regular affordable housing pathway, which is just the normal rent. You know, you just go to the leasing office, they'll see what you qualify for, and that's another way to do it. But what makes this affordable? What is affordable housing? So affordable housing, I'll use the example of, let's say the median rent in your area is $1,000. These apartments have units at different percentages. It's usually 60%. It can drop all the way to 30%. So the 60% AMI will basically say, if rents are normally $1,000 in this area, it's going to be $600. If rent's, you know, normally $1,000 and it's a 30%, it's going to be $300. And that's kind of what makes it affordable. And so that's the other way. So some of our adults who are working but didn't qualify for a waiver, they'll just do it that way and, apply for other resources if need be. And the majority of how people connect with OSG is actually through our community pathway. So it's just folks, living in the area. They may be in group homes. They may be living with their family. They may be living at an apartment that they wanted to live in, which is perfectly fine. The big thing, again, is just creating that community where people get to know each other, want to hang out. Just last week, we had one of our events is the dinner clubs, and we had it, and about over 60 people showed up. And that was pretty intense for me. I'm not going to lie. 60 people trying to talk to you at once. But it was really awesome to see that, because I think that's the most I've had at a dinner club. And it's kind of, beautiful to see the growth of our stomping ground. In the beginning, some of the dinner clubs would get like 10 people, and then we're at 25, and now we're hitting 60. I'm like, oh man, it's a lot of people. But it's easy, it helps to see everyone and really see the beauty of the work we're doing. So those are the three ways you can get connected, to one of our communities. And this is a little map of all the locations we're at. And so the community builder, what is a community builder? And I'm, the lead community builder, but I'm also the Arlington community builder. So what that means is, we have all these social events. So there will always be a community builder at these events, but also I'm the community builder for Arlington. So you see on the right side, Queens Court, the Cadence, and Gilliam Place. Those are the properties you'll see me mostly at. So checking in with our adults who live at those buildings, or if they need some help, being a part of their circle of assistance or support. An example that happened that I thought was pretty fun was one of our adults wanted to make a pizza, but needed help with the oven. So I just walked in, showed him how to use the oven, showed him the instructions on how to make a pizza, and doing things like that. Or if I'm at a building, I'm working on my computer, but I have time to chat with people, I'll send a message to one of our group chats and like, hey, downstairs if you want to come hang and talk with me, or, if you just want to, literally, if you just want to hang out. I think I spent, one time I spent an hour talking about Godzilla. So, it's just having those fun social moments, where you feel like this is your home. So creating those spaces. And then we have two other community builders. We have Anna, who's the Alexandria community builder. So she is on the south side, which is the Waypoint and the Arden. And we have Joy, who is the Herndon and Fairfax community builder. So you'll see her at the Ovation on the west side, and also the Robinson. And the Robinson is the newest building OSG has partnered with. So we're super excited about that because it's next to the George Mason campus. So trying to, build relationships with the school, to really, make the most out of that area. So, like you can see, it's pretty spread out, but that's why I'm happy there's 3 community builders. But those are the 7 locations you'll find us, building that community. And another thing I always tell people is, yes, we have these physical locations, but we also try to host online events. So for some of our folks don't even live in there. I believe we have a social club on Tuesdays online, and a person Zooms in from like Rhode Island because they just want to hang out and talk with us. So that's another way we try to keep people connected, is doing some online events. So if you're interested, feel free to join us. So how do the OSG events work? One thing we'll say is the community builders we're not direct service providers. So we're not doing that one-on-one care for the adults who come to our events. So we always tell people, come in with the supports that you need. We want you to have a positive experience. We want you to feel supported. We just want you to have a good time. And so just letting people know about that, come with what you need. Everyone has different needs, especially in the disability community. We just want to make sure everyone enjoys themselves at these events that we host. So always like to remind people that, to, again, make sure it's just a positive experience. And so one of the ways we build communities, we actually use WhatsApp. So it's kind of like a big text messaging. You can make groups. So we have a bunch of communities. We might have like a Gilliam Place, which is one of our buildings. We'll have a group for like one of our social clubs. And it's just a way to connect with people. Like, as you can see here on this is our main WhatsApp, 309 members. So it's a way to, just get a hold of people. Or if you're coming late to an event, or you're lost, you don't know where to go, send a quick message there. Myself or another staff member might be checking it, or even one of our adults who's at the event might see it before us. So they'll send a response like, hey, we're actually over here. So it's super easy way to, just be in, communication with each other, and also just to build community and have fun things like doing polls. Like you see on the right image, like, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? And we'll pick a couple spots and let our folks vote, or folks will recommend spots, and we'll put those up for a vote. And that's like kind of a way we pick where we're going for dinner sometimes. And our dinner clubs are super popular. We have them a couple times a month, and it's, again, really fun time. This is how we keep in communication. We also do emails and other things, but this is kind of like the easiest way and fastest way to really get a group of people together. And I'm going to share 2 quotes from 2 of our community members, and I'm going to talk about a third one. But this is Mike. And, Mike's experience, living on my own means I come and go as I please. I have access to stores, the metro for work, and OSG events like game nights and movement classes. I've met a lot of people that way. So I actually just was with Mike last Thursday. We were in Old Town. We had an event in Old Town, Virginia, where we just hung out, walked around. So it was great to see Mike. Mike just showed up, said, I'm here to hang out. And, we just had a good morning. We just hung out. There's about 11 of us, just went on a quick walk, grabbed lunch together, and then went our separate ways. So, that independence that Mike's talking about, to just go to events and just do what he wants. The next person we have is Nyrika, who's actually at the newest building, the Robinson. When I moved into my building, it was more people than I had ever seen before, but it feels more comfortable now. I've made new friends and even threw a party for the first time. I have a job I enjoy, and I like that yoga and art are right in my building. So again, just this is Nyrika's first time moving away from the familial home, and just that positive experience, hosting events in the buildings to make it easy for community members to, build that community. Being able to throw a party. I remember the first time I threw a party, how like great of a feeling that was, and providing that opportunity for our adults who've never done certain things like this before. So it's a really great experience. And another story is an adult that I support at one of our buildings. His name is Daniel. He doesn't have family in the Nova area, so he's kind of on his own. He didn't qualify for support, so checking up on him, helping him apply for assistance. He was living in a not an OSG building, and he really needed help, so we were able to move him to an OSG building where now he's having a great time. He has a community. He comes to events. I check up on him, making sure he's doing okay. Because one thing is, some folks, they don't have familial or any other type of support. So it's great that they have OSG, or, it's a simple thing as a drop-in. I'll say, hey, Daniel, what have you been up to? What's new with you? What have you done this weekend? And just trying to figure out how, he's actually doing, to see if he may need some more support. But it's also just great to talk to our community members. I really enjoy talking to them because they're so passionate about whatever they're passionate about. So it's always super exciting. So yeah, this is the team. Again, we're a small but mighty team. There's 5 of us. I always like to make the joke that I am employee number 2. So Claude was hired about 3 years ago, and I was hired about 2 years and 9 months ago. And then our executive director was hired, Margot. But again, we're a small team, and we do put on a lot of hats. I know I do, but we want what's best for this organization. We're all passionate about it. We all enjoy our jobs. And honestly, I feel like that's another one of the reasons why we're so successful, is just all of us enjoy our work, and we're driven to do it, and we love what we do. And you can see that in how our stomping ground, when you hear about our stomping ground, it's always positive. People talk about it. So you should listen to them, you should check them out. So I'm happy to hear that that's how people see us, and I want that to continue growing with the organization, but also with our future staff members. It's awesome to it's just Claude and I, and now there's 5 of us. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Paula.
I love this. At one point before we had staff, and I was working full time and doing the executive directorship of the organization. We were meeting with a group in North Carolina called Hope, and they shared this with us. They said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I've used that ever since, and I've thought about that. I mean, truth is, we really are. Someone out there tonight really needs to think, hopefully will be inspired and say, you just can't wait. Nothing changes until we change it. But I love this prophecy, and we have enough time. So I think I want to share a little bit about, read this to you for a second, because I think it's so beautiful. Is there risk in what we do, moving our kids out? Yes, but we call that the dignity of risk. And I think that's really important, because am I scared sometimes about Mike, our son? Yes. Yes. But I want him to have the same life as his siblings. And that comes with risk sometimes, even for his siblings. The prophecy goes like this: where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for your leader. And then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, this could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, and they will try to hold on to the shore, and they will feel they are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destinations. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration, because we are the ones we've been waiting for. This is about creating community. It is the heart and soul of OSG, is the community it's created. Loneliness and isolation are real, and they are the biggest factor to poor health outcomes in our adults with disabilities. There is nothing I could do, no physician, no therapist could make our son's life better until he had a community. So I really urge you to even start with creating the community. If you can create it around affordable housing building where you have a few units where you can move a few adults in, great. But I really encourage you to get started. Next slide, Josue. This is how you can contact us and join. Follow us. It's really important. Follow our Instagram, like our posts. Everybody likes Rough and Puff. I always tell this story. Rough and Puff, New York City has like 2.7 million followers. And that's because the dogs are really cute and they hop on the bus and they go places. And, I learned early on when I was starting this that, the disability community really, I guess it doesn't fit the bill of cute. And so it's hard to get people to follow and really stay with us on some of these. And I think if we get together and we make 2.7 million followers for our events, that's a it's a big change that we need to see. So sign up for the monthly calendar or even the weekly newsletter just to see what we're doing, just to give you ideas for what you might want to do in your area. And follow us, because I think this is a movement that will keep going. I'm sorry. I just heard a noise out there. Sorry. Apologize. So we have plenty of time for questions. We tried to keep it short and sweet because we know that questions are really the heart of these presentations. So please, we can stop sharing and answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, so if anyone has a question, feel free to raise the hand feature, take yourself off mute.
It's Alice. I'm trying to raise my hand, but I
There
don't
you
know.
go. You're fine, Alice.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Thank you so much. It definitely is very inspiring, and I appreciate, Paula, your saying it only takes one person. So I appreciate that. Connecticut is short on waivers right now. And I was just wondering if you, how do you pay for or support the community builders? Is it a grant program or fundraising? How do you manage that? And do you have housing experts on your team also?
So we do have on our board a housing someone who works in housing development. He's a former family that I took care of his children. Many of the people I met and established the board with were former patients, family members, and he's great. He gives us a lot of that housing perspective. We are not funded by the government, and we don't get funding through DARS, Department of Education, Department of Rehabilitation Services, and we don't get money through as a direct service provider like some organizations do. And this is, we've thought about it, but it puts us in a bureaucracy we're not sure we want, you know, to get into right now. So we do most of it through fundraising, local grants, community grants. We're getting more and more traction in that way. And we're looking for, you know, as we move forward, corporate sponsorship, the way we can garner that to pay the salaries of our community builders, which we want to pay them well. This is important work, really important. And I think eventually an innovation grant is what we would love to see the state of Virginia put forth for us. We are using money wisely. People who have waivers are using less of their hours with somebody who might normally, Main Street has seen this up in Rockville. Somebody who normally is using 40 hours a week is now using 20 hours a week because they're participating in our events. We need the research to go with it and to show that, right? The numbers, and our people also stay housed. So that's a big, I think, right, Josue, no one has moved out of our communities. A couple have moved to different communities, but we've managed to keep our adults housed, which is huge. So no government funding at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do they have access to 24, like are your community builders like 24/7, or is there a time frame that they can, you know, reach out for that support?
Josue?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're 24/7, but I mean, folks will text me, and just with our personalities. And like I said, we're all very passionate. So it's not really a bother for us. Like, it's pretty funny, honestly. I enjoy it. I'll get phone calls at like 9 o'clock on a Saturday just to see how I'm doing. But I mean, I like that. It feels good that someone's wondering what I'm up to. So I mean, it doesn't bother me. And I know the other staff members, I mean, if we're busy, we won't respond until when we are able to. So just having that, space.
Yeah, what does the future look like? Hope House in Southern Virginia, we love their organization. They used to do group homes. They got out of group homes. They really believe this is the way to move forward. They have in their apartment buildings, which I think is very interesting, they are direct support personnel. So they have a unit in each apartment building where they have 24/7 staff. So if someone, needs help in the middle of the night, that staff is there for them. We look at things like that. We think about the future. This is where we are now, and getting these people moved in and establishing this presence and showing that it can work is so important.
Hi, this is Meg. I have a question, and I apologize for being off camera, but I have a teenager next to me who thinks this Zoom call is for him. So I'm trying to control the environment. In the presentation, are most of these young adults, or whatever age they are they higher functioning and that they can live on their own, or have you been able to develop an environment where someone can move in who isn't able to live, entirely on their own?
It's a great question. Josue, do you want to talk about some of our adults?
Yeah, everyone has different needs, and that's kind of, the waiver. Every waiver isn't the same. So some folks do qualify for like 24/7 care where they have their own staff members around the clock. Some folks don't need that. Some folks just need, the apartment. Some folks have an attendant, or some folks have a live-in aide who lives there as a roommate. So it all depends on the waiver and what folks qualify for. So we have a wide range of folks living in our buildings. We have folks who are non-speaking, but they're able to live by themselves. They have technology that supports them, like something to reminder to take their medication. It's like a little technology that beeps. They know it's time to take my medication. And there's a camera in the room, so if they ever feel like they need someone to talk to or support, they hit a button on the camera. You know, there's a lot of ways to help support people who society doesn't think can be supported in living independently. So yeah, we have a wide range of folks living at our buildings.
Thank you.
You're
This
welcome.
this is amazing. So I appreciate you taking the time to share all of this with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go
I'm
ahead,
happy-
Kim. You have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you produce some sort of annual report or something that shows the data that can be used to demonstrate the, success of this type of programming.
So we were audited for the first time because we've reached that level, so we've grown in that way that we needed to be audited. But one of our grants, one of our biggest grantors is in Arlington County, and they require data keeping. That's a lot of work for our community builders, but it does give a lot of information. Do you want to speak to that, Josue? Because we talk about a report. That is the next thing we hope to do. As of the 19th of May, we have a new website, the new logo behind me. That all has taken enormous energy. We lost our trademark for our stomping ground, unfortunately. And so we are going to be OSG as of this summer period. And we can tell you what it means going after July. People will ask. But so the website we're getting ready to launch will have, we hope, even algorithms that might help people sort of navigate housing. And there's so much we want to do, but that data collection is really important, and our housing developers need it as well, because they have to prove with their resident services so many hours. So Josue, maybe talk a little bit about that data collection you do for Arlington.
Yeah, we do for our events, we keep track of everything we do, keep track of volunteer hours, stuff like that. And that's kind of how we're getting these local grants. We have to submit all this data. I don't think in this moment, like I said, we're still very young, so we're not as, established as a lot of other nonprofits that have, you can send them an email, they can send you a PDF of all this information. We're not at that stage yet. We're hoping to be there soon, especially with the new website, more staff members. So I mean, again, I've been here for 2 and a little bit over and a half years, and there's so many things that we're creating at this moment, that's going to impact OSG in 10 years. So, but I mean, if you have any like specific question, like, is there a specific thing you want to know, or you're just wondering?
I just know that here again in Connecticut, like for example, our housing authority, there's not a lot of opportunities or grants at this point. In fact, there's waiting lists for the waiting lists. And so part of what we would need to market this type of program out there, we would need to use information to share with legislators, for example, although I
Yeah.
was happy to say that you kind of successfully managed to stay out of the government realm. But even still, I think to get basically, I'm thinking more financial background, people do want to see the data. They want to know this is
Yeah.
something successful. And it's helpful for us if we can point to a successful model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at, again, as I mentioned before, the cost of what it is to keep someone, in a nursing home or in an institution or even in, group home, I mean, we come out the lowest. I think it's about there is a study out on that, $41 a day versus, the average nursing home is $600 a day. So we know that this works and it's economical and this is the way to go. I think this model that we have here is very important. I think if we could grow this to, I think, the awareness and have states sort of look at this and say, we're not the housing solution for everyone, but we certainly can be a housing solution for many. So I think the future is, how do we show that? How do we show that? Okay, and I think Main Street is doing the same thing, and we're talking all the time. If you look at the Autism Housing Network put out by the Madison House Foundation, that's an interesting map. And there are intentional communities throughout the country, but they're not inclusive. There's very few that are inclusive, very few. I think they're starting to grow, but most of these are parents got together and they said, look, we're worried. Let's build a place. And it's, off somewhere, and it's private, and it costs $5,000, $6,000 a month for your child to live there. And it's just not obtainable for the average person. And then it's all good when you're alive, but when you're gone, who's taking care of this? So I don't know that that's real viable, but this is taking off. The Kelsey out in the Bay Area, they're amazing. They're amazing advocates. They are kind of co-developers. They're interesting. They're co-developers. They're not the developer, but they're a co-developer, which gets them into the stack. So they build in a community, they call it a concierge or something. They have a name for Josue in their buildings. And they build it into the development of the building. I think that's the future. I do.
Another big thing that we do, and I can actually show you all a video because I think it's pretty impactful, is, you know, we do a lot of advocacy. We take our adults to advocate on behalf of new buildings. It may not even be an OSG building, but the fact that we're making more housing. And again, you don't have to be a part of an OSG building to be a part of what we do. You can live somewhere else that's affordable and still come hang out with us. And so I'm going to share a clip of like one of our adults who's in one of our communities. You know, we had a big group of us, but let me see if it works. Can you see this video?
Yes.
I'm hoping the audio works. I'm not sure if the audio. Let me know if you can hear it. Can you hear it?
No, no voice, Josue. I wonder why.
Well, let me see. They should be able to include audio in the screen share. Let me try again.
This
Yeah,
was,
sometimes you have to click share
Sure.
audio
Yeah,
too before you, yeah.
Yeah, I see it now.
this is Melwood. They had a piece of property in Crystal City, Virginia. If you ever know where Crystal City is, down near Reagan National Airport. It's a prime piece of property, and they wanted to build this affordable housing community with, I think it's like 50% of adults with disabilities. And
Hi,
so here we go.
You should be able to hear audio now. Please let me
Good
know.
afternoon.
There was a lot of
Hi, good
NIMBY.
afternoon. My name is PTE and I'm a 38-year-old man with a disability. I've worked at Culpeper Gardens for the last 12 years where I'm employed as a server for the residents living in the independent living site. I've twice been awarded with Employee of the Month, and I really enjoy my coworkers and residents we serve. A year ago, I moved into the Cadence, another Wesley property, so I could be closer to work on my fiance, Chloe. I also can also be part of our Stomping Ground community. The building is really neat, and the OSG program has been very helpful and fun. I've met a lot of my neighbors and made new friends. Recently, I've started volunteering at AFAC, and I'm very proud to be able to give back to the community as well that the community has given me. I would encourage everyone to support the new Millwood property in Crystal City. Wesley properties are gorgeous, and I'm excited that there could be more OSG programming for our friends there. Affordable and inclusive housing has changed my life. I feel lucky to be a part of OSG, and I know my family is so grateful to know that I am thriving in my new community. We need places like my new place at Culpeper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sway, I hadn't seen that one. I've seen other ones. So important, right?
And like I was there for a lot of it, but I didn't catch the end because this was like over a couple hours. But one of the like county board members pointed to that exact moment of what Peter was saying and how this is why we need more housing. You know, there's an adult who has a disability, you know, living with his fiance, you know, being a part of the community, volunteering for the community. And so, you know, this is one of the ways too that we show, you know, we might not have like, you know, a very nice PDF, but, you know, this advocacy work where our adults, their voices are heard, you know, their life, you know, they're talking about their positive life experiences. And that's another thing we try to do as an organization.
So do you serve all people with disability, like regardless of disability? I mean, do you look at that, or are you primarily focused on, intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Oh, no, we have several adults in our communities who do not have intellectual and developmental disabilities, cerebral palsy. I'm trying to think, Josue, other individuals.
I was thinking like physical, just, if there's like
Yes,
physical
wheelchair
dis-
bound, yes. You know, the amount of accessible units in the country is very low. Something that Kelsey is really taking the lead on is accessible units, and they've written some guidelines, and they're taking the lead in that area, but it's very hard. I think each of our buildings has maybe a couple,
Yeah.
Josue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, for our events, it's not just adults with disabilities. That's not inclusion. So we have folks who don't have disabilities who enjoy our work and love what we do. So they just come to hang out. And that's part of the beauty. We have these events in the buildings, so it's open to everyone. We have kids, I have a game night on Thursdays at the Cadence where folks are playing board games. The kids mostly like video games, but they're playing video games. But they'll walk up to one of our adults and like, hey, I know you like Candyland. I want to play Candyland. And so one of our adults who's 23 is playing Candyland with a 7-year-old, and they're having a grand old time. So, it's again, that's, building that community. So it's not just adults with disabilities.
Each of the affordable housing developments has resident services, but community spaces that are shared, which is wonderful. And we're allowed to use those spaces, and our community builders have access to these places. And we have had Deloitte host, it'll be the third year they're hosting. They take us out as a project and host, it's Deloitte Give Back Day. And so we have been, it'll be the third year we'll establish a Nintendo station at another one of our communities. And they purchase games for us and the big screen and whatever we need. And this is hugely helpful and gets the word out.
Dr. Schlegel, do you have a question?
I do. I have 2 questions, actually. This is great. Again, I'm so inspired as I was when I first saw you speak, Paula. You've mentioned a couple programs, the Kelsey, Main Street as well, others that you admire
Yes.
and have used as models. And I'm just curious if there are any other models that you would recommend that we look into as well.
Yes, I probably have a list aside somewhere. I have a lot of notes I keep and advocacy. But I would say what Hope House is doing in Southern Virginia, Main Street, the Kelsey, Hope in North Carolina. There's Hope House in Virginia and Hope in North Carolina. Just off the top of my head, Josue, who else have we had visits from that
I mean,
are doing similar work?
another model near us are L'Arche Homes, which I really like. I volunteer for L'Arche, so I really love their work. It's different than what we do, but it's another way to house people. And so learning about them, I think, is pretty important because they're international.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then my other question is, I love how this started by, a few parents who just said, we need to start this. And, as my work in transition for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families, I've had countless families ask me about this. And I would love, and I know I've asked you this before, Paula, but I would love some kind of guide. I mean, again, you don't have to publish it, but some kind of direction. Like, what would you tell if there's a parent on this call, or that we encounter next? What should they do to get started to do this? I mean, like, what are your first steps?
Yeah.
Where do you go?
I think the biggest thing was, besides getting the full support of my husband, who's going to be in the thick of it with me, because he had just retired, and I was working full time. I think the biggest thing is have the support. If you're married, your spouse is going to support you in this because you're going to take this on. But to gather those people, I knew exactly where I needed to go to find those people. And then I asked them to find, who do you know? Gather a very dedicated small group of people. It doesn't have to be huge. We had no money when we sat around my kitchen table and did this, but we really wanted this. And speak really passionately, right? I think that you want this, so it's like you're selling it. You're constantly selling it to other parents because they're tired. Our parents are exhausted. Raising a child with a disability takes so much from you. But get started. You don't need a lot to get started. And what is your model? What is your state laws? What's your data in Connecticut? That was the first thing I tried to find out. Where's everybody living? How many people do we have? And the data's not well kept. It's just not. So it's almost as if you have to go to those transition teams in high schools and pediatricians' offices, which is one of our goals, to start educating our transition teams and our pediatricians, our healthcare providers of that 22-year-old age group when they fall off. Where are they going, and can we follow you forward? Can we begin by following you forward? Because it's hard to follow backwards anymore. It's hard to find out where they went. But if you can get some good data and you get together and you say, okay, what do we want to do? How do we want to do this? I don't suggest building a building. It's ridiculously expensive. I mean, we were very naive thinking we could build a building in Fairfax County, one of the most expensive real estates in the country. But this works. We don't need to build it. We don't need to maintain the building. We just need those units.
Mhm.
And I don't know what Connecticut has. Are there any set aside? Is there any thought of, other states are hoping, there's other states that are under Department of Justice lawsuits and they're taking advantage of the same opportunity. It shouldn't have to be that way. We should be able to speak powerfully about how important this is. Our adults are cleaning up the communities. They're making an impact. We're doing tutoring in the building. All of that matters. So it's a long answer, but the thing is to get started, to find that group of people who will stay with you. And who you start with is not who you end up with. I'm sure of it. But it's okay. You need to get started.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Is there any additional questions? Well, thank you so much. This has been very informative. And again, for anybody who's interested in continuing the conversation, who may not be a part of ASDAC, you're welcome to send me an email and I will make sure that you are included when our housing committee meets to continue this conversation. And also everything is always posted on our website. So you can access that on the ASDAC website as well. If you just Google ASDAC CT, it'll come right up, and all of the recordings and information will be there as well, so you can share it with people who may not were able to join. So with that, I just want to thank you guys again for taking the time out of your evening to share the information, and thank you for all the good work you're doing in Virginia, and for, helping us think things differently here in Connecticut. So
you're welcome. And I'm still here in Connecticut. I'll be here in July. I'm happy if anybody wants to, and anybody out there is so inspired and they just want to meet for a cup of coffee and have me inspire them to move forward. I'm happy to do that and share that beginner knowledge of what it takes.
That was the best offer, Paula. I love that. This is how it starts, right? That cup of coffee.
That's exactly right. You can do it.
Yeah. Oh, this was fabulous. Thank you. Again.
You're welcome. Right. It was so nice to see you again, Sarah. And feel free to reach out to me and connect me with anyone who feels they just really like to just toss around a few ideas.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
well,
Josue.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Josue.
For sure.
Appreciate you
Good
both.
night, everyone.
Good night. Take
everyone.
care.
Take care, y'all.